Good evening, everyone. Welcome in to Uncle Jimmy's podcast. Wherever you are tuning in from right now, welcome back. The spot where real conversations happen, where we dig into the stuff that shapes us, breaks us, and ultimately rebuilds us stronger. I'm your host, Uncle Jimmy, coming to you from Studio 190. And today we're diving deep into something we all face, but not enough of us talk about openly: life transitions. The moments that knock the wind out of you, the seasons that force you to redefine who you are, and the quiet miracles that can emerge when you choose to lean in instead of run away, as we always often do. Our guest today is no stranger to walking through fire and coming out with light to share. She's a certified life transitions coach, a transformational speaker, and an author who's poured her heart into books and journals that help people find clarity in chaos. The founder of PH Academy and His Sound Ministries, and someone who truly believes, that you are created for more. She's helped more people navigate grief, loss, relationship resets, mindset shifts, and everything in between, turning pain into purpose and uncertainty into intentional living. She's a woman of voice, vision, and deep faith, blending sharp, strategic thinking from over 3 decades in corporate and professional spaces with soul level wisdom. Whether she's coaching one on one, speaking to audiences, or singing her truth, her message is consistent. Life's pivots aren't endings, they're invitations to your next chapter. Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends of the podcast, please give me a huge, heartfelt welcome to Coach Paula Hollis. Paula, thank you so much for joining us today. We're honored to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. Thank you. What an introduction. Who's that lady?
That's you. That's what everybody says to me. Who's that lady? And that's the greatest thing about having the podcast, right? Is everybody's so humble, right? That I have on. But if they were really to look at you from where I'm sitting, right, and things I've read about you and what you do, it's
Yeah.
powerful, right? It's so powerful that the power that people have, right? That it's almost like, Paula goes into the phone booth like Superman. She comes out and there's Superwoman, right? Here she
Right.
is. She's gonna take care of you. She's gonna make sure you're good. She's gonna coach you up. She's gonna make sure everything's good. So I'm super excited to have you on. So just tell people a little bit about yourself and where you're from, where you live, and we'll get
Sure,
into some
sure.
questions.
So my name is Paula Hollis. Some people call me Paula, Mama P, QB. I have different variant names. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia, but I currently reside in South Jersey. I'm about 15 minutes from Delaware and about 45 minutes from Philadelphia now. I am a widow after 30 years of marriage. I have three sons. My sons are 33, 25, and 20. I have a wonderful daughter in love and a 7-year-old grandson who steals my heart every day.
Every day. That must be so special,
Every
right?
day. It's the being a grandmother is just like the best thing in life.
The heart melts every day once he walks through that door, I bet you.
Every day, and my
Right?
heart melts every day. I've worked for approximately, I guess, 30 years now for a major health insurance company in Philadelphia. I've done things in the IT world, project management, systems conversions and migrations, and anything of that sort in nature. I'm currently managing healthcare value networks for that insurance company. But also on the side, I am a certified life coach. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and that is what brings my life joy to help people to navigate grief and loss. I've certainly endured numerous losses in life, and trying to find what that gift in grief is seems to be like my specialty to try to help people to shift and pivot their mindset around grief and loss. So
Yeah. Yeah, and so many people, right? They deal with grief and loss every day,
every
right?
day.
And people sometimes, right? Even myself, I say it. I'm just going through this journey of transitioning from who I was to who I'm becoming, and
Yeah,
it dealt with a lot of loss. And it wasn't loss in the sense of someone was no longer on this earth. It was loss in a relationship, and
it's still
you know,
loss.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's still a loss. And my role, one of the biggest things I had to do was look in the mirror and see my role in a lot of it. and you look back, right, and you're so mad when it ends, but then you're like, wow, it should have ended. She should have left me. I wasn't really the guy that I was supposed to be or
Mm,
who I could be, right? And
yeah.
I'm divorced as well, so I was able to look through that lens as well and see everything through that, and
Mhm.
but what I found, Paula, was for me was that I was living a lie, right? I was getting up every morning, putting this mask on, pretending everything was okay,
Yeah.
and I wasn't being genuine or authentic of who I am, right? I
Yeah.
became someone I wasn't,
Yeah. That
you know?
happens. And
You
and
know?
and we get it's a drift that occurs, and it starts slowly and subtly. And if we don't catch it, we can be so far away from where we intended to
Yeah,
be. But
yeah,
yeah, you're so right. Like
yeah,
but we have to get to the point where we come back to our original selves
yeah.
and we find ourselves and then start living authentically. And
Authentically,
I've
yeah,
had a similar experience as well. Yeah.
yeah.
So
It's powerful when you come out on the other end of it, when you come out on the other end of it and you're like, wow, this is what life really is, right? One of the biggest things I'm learning, Paula, is living in the present, right? Not worrying about what
yes,
happened yesterday, not worrying what's going to happen tomorrow, because none
absolutely.
we may not be here tomorrow, right? And what
Exactly.
happened yesterday, I can't control. So,
Right.
it's powerful, and I say it, that life comes at you quick, right?
It
And you,
does.
you you can't use the excuse that we all use, and that's, oh, life gets in the way, right? Life's in the way, but life's life.
Mhm.
So if you learn to live life on life's terms, it's going to eat you up and spit you out. But when you learn to live life on your terms,
That's
it's
right.
powerful. It's
That's
powerful,
right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's like it's all about how we respond. It's all about how we frame things. Like that's a big thing for me. How you frame a situation is how you perceive it.
Yeah,
It can look one way, it can seem one way, but how am I framing it and how am I then navigating it in turn ultimately impacts the way I see it.
the way
So,
you see it. Yeah, yeah,
mhm.
and being able, right, when you come out on the other side of having that clarity on everything,
Clarity.
right?
Clarity is gold.
Yeah,
Yes.
I never experienced it till, a couple months back where I'm like, "What is this? What
Wow.
How can I
Yeah.
see this situation now like this, and then from this, this way and that way?" And, having a healthy mind, right? And being
Yes.
able to be healthy, and one of the biggest things was being able to do that. I'm on this weight loss journey. I've lost 100 pounds, and,
Well,
wasn't even
congratulations.
yeah, so it feels great, but it feels awkward, right? I'm used to being like, 350 pounds and this big fat guy, and I used to
Okay.
say, Uncle Jimmy's podcast is a little thing off of, Uncle Buck, right? Because I have no kids. So I'm like the Uncle Buck. I come in, I'm like John
Okay.
Candy, and the niece and
Yeah.
nephews love me, and I'm handing out money, and we're having fun, and I'm just the fun uncle. So losing it all, it's the weirdest thing. It's like I can see that I have a neck, and I can, but the biggest thing I haven't been able to push through, Paula, is changing my clothes, right?
Oh.
I
So
still wear the big
you still
clothes.
see yourself as you were and you're wearing
Yeah,
the larger clothes. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
and
interesting.
it's
I'm going through a similar transition myself. I guess I've lost over 100 pounds
awesome,
myself. Yeah.
awesome, right?
And
It's almost like that identity though we're used to having of being that big person, right?
I know some of my friends are like, okay, you need to throw those jeans away.
But we're so comfy in them, right? And
I
I think
know.
that's that's one of the biggest things I think people do get, very comfortable in situations in life,
Yes,
whether it's a good situation, a bad situation,
exactly.
we get comfortable, right? I'm
Yep.
learning now to be uncomfortable and
Yes.
realizing, "Hey, if I'm uncomfortable, this situation may not be right for me. This is how I can exit," or, "Hey, this situation is right." But coming from a healthy mind is a
Yeah.
strong thing that I never thought of. Like, I thought I had a healthy mind, but I wasn't. I
Gotcha.
wasn't living like that, right?
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah,
Paul,
but
what's
but it's also that being uncomfortable also is the seedling of growth
exactly,
because we got to come
exactly?
outside of that comfort zone to
Yeah,
experience real growth. Yeah.
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 In 41 years, I lived in that comfort zone of just being comfortable, and once I stepped out, I was like, okay. It almost like I felt like I was living life for the first time, almost.
Wow.
You know?
That's a beautiful feeling, Jimmy. Like
Oh, it's
that's
amazing. You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's amazing, and I tell people, right, when I did it all the work that I've done is mostly, by myself in
Yeah.
in the dock, in my own mind, and pushing through of those, whether it was some trauma, whether it was relationships or my marriage or any of that, and
Gotcha.
pushing through and seeing, right, instead of 41 years, which I always did was point the finger at everybody else, was look at my role in all of it, right?
Yeah.
Accountability is a big word, right?
Very big word. Yes.
7 months ago, you couldn't hold me accountable. You couldn't even have a conversation with me. I would scream and yell, and I would have to get my
Wow.
point across and argue, and that's all I knew.
Wow. What a transformation.
It's amazing.
Congratulations. Yeah.
It's amazing, and one of the biggest things I say is that sometimes in life, right, you live it and you think you're doing the right thing, and you think, I say it all the time. My work life was great. I'm
Okay.
successful. I am very good at what I do, but at what point is my professional life great for 20 years
Hmm.
and my personal life is shit?
Right.
It's no good. So
Right.
I had to take stock in all of that, and I'm glad I'm out on the other side, and I'm glad I'm living life, and I'm excited. I'm excited for what it brings, and I also
Yeah.
realize that one of the biggest things is tomorrow may never come. So I
Right.
tell people how I feel. I tell them
Yeah.
if I love them, if hey,
Yeah.
one of the biggest things now is boundaries, right? Of calling people out and
Absolutely.
telling them, hey, you made me feel some type of way. That's not right.
Yes. Yes. And my feelings are valid. You
My
know,
feelings are valid. Yeah. Yeah.
my feelings are valid, and being able to express them. I mean, I know I went through that a lot when after my husband passed away, because
Hey,
Paula was always the docile one. Paula never really said anything. Paula never really, wrinkled anything. Everything was just straight. And Paula had a lot of feelings and
yeah.
thoughts about things, but she just kind of kept them to herself.
Yeah.
And, after my husband passed away, and here I am, trying to navigate being single for the first time in my adult life, because I got married at 21.
Yeah.
So, this is my first time ever really being an independent adult. And I'm not really independent. I got three people looking at me that are dependent
Exactly.
on me,
Yeah.
and so I'm trying to navigate this new territory. And I'm like, how do I do this? Like, this is different. This is new. And so I literally, like you're saying, I had to come to some terms with myself, like some
Yeah.
things that I've created that I really shouldn't have, and things that I really need to do that I have not done. And, I really had to have some real come to Jesus moments,
Moments.
with
Yeah.
myself. And I had to realize what is most essential for me. Because at the end of the day, we always talk about it, putting on my safety mask and making sure that I'm good. That's important, because if I'm
Yeah.
not good, those that are dependent on me aren't good either. And so I had to learn how to really care for myself. And I had to learn that no is a complete word. It's a complete
Exactly.
it's a complete sentence, and it's okay for me to say it. It's
Yeah.
it's okay. And so that was a journey. That was a
And how
process.
powerful was it when you first said it? No.
It was very powerful, and it was shocking. It was
Yeah.
shocking for others,
Yeah.
and it was challenging for me, because I was just like, "Oh gosh, I really said it," and I have a
Yeah.
million things going through my mind, and people kind of were taken back, like, "Oh wow, you've changed." I was like, "I'm glad you noticed."
Exactly. Yeah, because people weren't used to hearing Paula say no.
No,
Same as me.
no,
When I said no, it was like, wow, I got power like that?
right?
Like I got the
Yeah,
power.
yeah, and
And it's
sometimes we don't realize, us saying yes, yes, yes all the time. We're really enabling people more than what we should. And
exactly.
so they're never going to step up and do what they should do as long as we're covering it.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
mm-mm.
Yeah. And then, when you do that, you start to compensate on other levels, right? You like you said,
Yeah,
you keep your inner voice in. You
yeah,
keep it instead of letting people know, hey, how you feeling, right?
exactly.
And people in life, unfortunately, right? And I hate to say it, they'll take advantage of you.
They
They'll take
will.
advantage of that, and they'll
Yeah,
use and abuse you. But when you do come out on that other side, there's that none of that's allowed because you can see it. You can see it coming from a mile away, and it's
yeah,
like, whoo, like no, I can say no. I can lay in bed all day if I want. I don't have to answer to you. I don't have to listen to what you say, right? Your
right.
opinion doesn't matter to me, and it's
Yeah,
powerful.
it
It
is.
it's like a second lease on life, right? A second chance to do it right this time, right?
Yes,
And I'm glad I
yes,
caught it at 41, not at 51 or 61. So I'm glad.
absolutely. I'm proud of you.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So, Paula, what drew you to specialize in life transitions coaching? What personal pivot in your own life lit that fire?
Yeah, so I think the thing that hit me for the life transitions coaching was, my husband and I, after COVID, like I have to kind of back up, like kind of what happened with COVID. So during COVID, I live in my home with all my kids and my husband, and I was the first one to contract COVID. And I was the last one to recover. So we all got it, with the exception of two of my sons and my grandson, who was like, 2 or 3 at the time. So we kind of had barriers within the house and different things. But mine was really bad. And I had not slept for like about 4 or 5 days, and I was
Oh,
getting loopy and kind of getting a little delirious. My husband was the one that kind of was going out of the house more most often, because he was still working, at the post office. And then when he finally contracted it, that was like it. So now we're all in the house together. And having not slept, I ended up, my kids were trying to get me to go to sleep, and they put on a boring movie, and they thought that I had fallen asleep, but I didn't. And what ended up happening is I started having a seizure.
oof.
And I've never had a seizure before in life, but later my neurologist said that my body was just trying to reset itself. And
Okay.
so I ended up having this seizure. And when I had the seizure, I stopped breathing here in my home.
Oof.
And of course, they called 911. My husband immediately, he was CPR trained. He performed CPR on me because I had stopped breathing.
Stop
And
breathing.
fortunately, he was able to resuscitate me, but I was unconscious. And so the paramedics, they came, they, told my family, yes, she's unconscious, we're going to take her to the hospital. Of course, my family couldn't come to the hospital, any of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And so I spent several days in the hospital. And so it was like, oh, wow, like I died. I died in my house.
Yeah.
My husband was the one to resuscitate me. So fast forward after that, my husband and I went to celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary. We had gone to the beach. I'm a beach bum. And so he had taken me to the beach, and we are having a great time. And we're coming back over one of the big bridges down in Maryland as we're coming back towards New Jersey. And I don't know, I always seem to get some level of inspiration around water.
Yeah.
And as we're coming over this long bridge on 3 occasions, it came in my spirit like, Paula, I'm going to use your grief stories to help others to navigate grief. So, like the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, yeah, I do have grief stories. My brother died when I was 15. Oh, yeah, my mom died on my birthday. My dad died. So I'm like thinking, I'm like, yeah, okay. All right, I got some grief stories that I can try to help people. Okay.
Yeah.
Then the second time it came again, I'm like, okay, yeah, my dad. Oh, yeah, my second brother. And oh, yeah, my third brother. So now I'm starting to go through these deaths. Oh,
Everything.
yeah. And oh, my nephew, he got murdered. Oh, my other nephew got murdered. Oh, yeah. Okay. I do have some grief. So I'm rehearsing the grief stories. Okay. Second time, check, check. Then I heard it the third time as we're crossing this bridge, and I'm like, okay, you're going to use my grief stories. All right, right. I get it up there, right? And so when I got home, I have this journal that I keep. It's kind of like my little journal of faith, to kind of help me to know when I'm really hearing and directing my life. And so I write down the date, what I kind of felt or sensed and heard, and the date that it manifested and actually came true, and how it
Yeah.
manifested, right? And so it helps me to gain some confidence, like, okay, yeah, that really wasn't a sandwich, or that wasn't my late night, escapade. Like that had some real credence and credibility. And so I just wrote it in the journal, and it's like, okay, let's see how, that plays out. So that was August of 2021. A couple of weeks later, my husband was the youngest of 11. And his oldest brother, his wife, was in the hospital, and she had battled different health issues, and she passed away in the hospital. While we were at the hospital sitting vigil, her grandkids were like, Auntie P, my dad, my papa wants you to come and sing, because I'm a singer also.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
he wants you to come and sing, and I'm like, sing? He's like, yeah, like just sing over her. And I'm just like, really? Like, okay, I've never done that before. But I'm gonna honor, what my family asked. And so that was that August. And then that November, my husband and I, at the end of October, my husband and I were singing in this concert. We had volunteered to be singers for this group that was having a concert. And at that concert, my husband, very freak accident, he ruptured his Achilles. And so it was midpoint. He ruptured it in like the first half. And so he set out the first half in a wheelchair. And when I came off stage, I'm like, oh my God, like what happened? And he's just like, oh, baby, just go ahead. The show must go on. Go ahead and do the second half. I'm like, no, you can't stand up. You can't put pressure on your foot. We're going, to the hospital, and come find out he had ruptured his Achilles. So now he was 6 weeks from retirement. He worked for 34 years for the U.S. Postal Service, and he was about to retire. And they were like, "Well, it's going to take probably a good 8 weeks for it to heal. So you're bye bye. You're no
Yeah.
more work for you." And so now my husband's like home with me, and I'm like, "Oh God, I wasn't quite ready for him to be home yet, but okay." Let's adjust to this. And so we're getting used to that. And then something crazy happened. It was a Monday. I got a phone call from my niece. My sister had collapsed and was found unresponsive.
Oof.
And my niece was like, "Auntie P, we don't know what to do. We're rushing her to the hospital." I'm like, "Okay, I'm on my way." And my husband's like, "I'm going to go with you." I was like, "Babe, you can't even walk. Like, you're on this like scooter, whatever." I said, "Just stay here." He's like, "No, no, I'm going to support you." And so we go to the hospital, and, they don't know how long my sister had been, unresponsive. And
Yeah.
so we went through the whole 10 days of, batteries of tests and trying to, determine viability of life and so forth. And so, needless to say, on November the 18th of 2021, my sister passed away.
Wow.
And so I had already lost four brothers. And so now this was my first sister. So I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I have one sister left." And so my husband was with me through the whole thing. My sister had six daughters. And so we're trying to help them to navigate and help them to figure out, how to do different things. And so fast forward now 6 days after that, um, um, in a weird chain of events, my husband passed away.
Passed away. Oh,
And I'm like, it was completely unexpected. Like, he was here 1 minute and he was going the next. And
the
here it
next.
was, the sedentary lifestyle of, the a blood clot had formed in his leg and traveled to his heart and caused an immediate heart attack. And
Oh,
he died instantly.
instantly.
And the
Oh,
crazy part of him not being able to be successfully resuscitated in the same room on the same floor where he had resuscitated me,
yeah.
that lives with me every day in this
Yeah.
house. Like, that is a constant reminder that there's a reason why I'm here. There's a reason why I need to share my story. There's a reason why I need to help others to navigate grief and loss, because I'm still here with a story to tell.
Yeah.
And that
Powerful.
kind of is what catapulted me into this place and space.
Yeah. So you've said people, right, are created for more. What does that phrase mean to you on a soul level?
On a soul level, it means that whatever it is that we're doing in life, I believe that each of us has a divine purpose. I don't believe that any of us are random. I believe that the Creator has a specific task for each and every one of us. I also believe that it's not coincidence, the people that come into our lives.
Yeah.
I believe of all the billions and billions of people in the world, there's a reason why I'm meeting you. There's a reason why you're meeting me. There's a reason why I met my husband, and all of that. And so I believe there's connectivity that comes. There's either something you're pouring into me, or something that you're pulling out,
Yeah.
of me to help me grow. And so that is where the basic premise of there's more. Like, what we see and who and what we are is only a foreshadow of all that is to come. And our job is, our God given assignment in life. It's not a decision. We tell our children, "Oh, you can grow up and be whatever you want to be." No, we were all created with a destiny, I believe. And so it's a matter for us to discover in life what that more is. And then
Is.
once we discover it, to then walk it out.
Ah, it's powerful. Powerful. And so grief, right? Grief often feels like it steals your voice. How have you seen people reclaim it through intentional work?
So I believe I've reclaimed my voice through the intentional work that I do
Yep.
in helping others to navigate grief and loss. And ironically, like, I thought telling the stories was about me telling my stories, because I have a lot of them. I have a lot of grief. I have a
Yeah.
lot of loss. But here recently, I've curated anthologies where I'm the visionary author, and I have invited others to write and share their grief stories.
Okay.
And so I released my first anthology back in November of last year. And it was life telling in so many ways. Because, first of all, I had people from a whole myriad. I had a person as young as 19 and someone as old as like 75, you know. And so
Yeah.
I had men, I had women, I had different stories, different losses, and so forth. Some were battling health and some lost children and spouses. Like, it was just all the myriad of stories. But what it helped them to find their voice. Because,
Their
like, one
voice.
person, she was in her 70s and had never written about or talked about what happened to her. She lost her husband and her daughter within like weeks of each
Yeah.
other, and she never had talked about it. She
It's
never, she kept it all, to herself, like all
all
those
bottled
years,
up.
all balled up. And it's the level of freedom that telling your story gives. Like, when we did the book launch, people were sharing their stories, and we had tears and tissues because people could relate. You telling your story creates freedom
Yeah.
for someone else to tell theirs.
Yeah.
And so that reclaiming of voice and reclaiming of identity comes from sharing stories, because too often we want to hide and we don't want to share. But there's
Yeah.
freedom that comes not just for us, but it also comes for others when we share our stories. And so I think that's a great way of reclaiming your voice.
So true. I think oftentimes we keep it to ourselves, and that was one of my things of just bottling it up, right, and pushing it down and pushing it down,
Yeah.
and until it finally blows, right, and it's not a healthy place to be in or a healthy way to deal with it. It's tough. So what's one of the biggest myths about grief or loss that you wish more people would let go of?
That is just something you get over.
Yeah.
It doesn't leave you. Like, I think people try to make, they want you to move on.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm a different person. And I have to process who that person is. And, I'm constantly dealing with grief.
Yeah.
It never leaves me. I know, I remember, I had to be strong, after my husband passed away, because I didn't have a choice. I had three kids like looking at me and depending on me, but it didn't mean that I didn't feel strong. It didn't mean that I wasn't struggling, but I had to be strong externally. And so to the external, it seemed like, oh, she's good, oh,
She's
she's all
good. She got
right.
it all
Oh,
together. She got it
yeah,
all
she's
figured out. Yeah.
yeah. And so one time I bumped into an elderly lady, and sometimes I feel like people don't know what to say around people that are grieving. And sometimes it's just best not to say anything, because the leather on your shoe really doesn't taste good. So stop putting your foot in your mouth. And
Yep.
so she kind of says to me, she was like, "Oh, Paula, you're so strong, and you've done so great, since Martin passed." She's like, "Do you even really miss your husband?"
Wow.
Hmm. I like wanted to slap kick her like right there. Like, I know I'm not supposed to hurt older people or anything like that. So I'm just like, I'm just looking at her like, are you serious? Did she just ask me that?
Crazy,
So
right?
I looked at her and I said, let me make sure I understand your question so I can make sure I'm answering it properly. I was like, you mean, do I miss the person that I have been dating since I was 18 years old? The person that I married at 21, the person who fathered the three of my children, who also fathered and shepherded me in quite some way. My husband was 8 years older,
Yeah.
someone who loved on me, who cared for me. You're asking me if I miss that person. I just want to make sure that that's what you're asking
What you're
me.
asking.
And she's like, oh, well, yeah, of course you miss them. I was like, of course I
Of
do.
course. Yeah.
So, I think that's one of the biggest things that people like, we don't get over it. Things trigger us. Like, I know the first time that I saw a mail truck, I immediately, just wanted to pray for that person, because I know how hard my husband worked over those 34 years.
Yeah.
I was in all the elements and, all of that. Like, I
Oh yeah.
felt for that person, like, oh God, cover them, keep them safe. Like, sometimes people aren't, nice and kind to the postal worker who's sitting on the side of the road, and so
Exactly.
I had great empathy, and it was like, okay, I felt, empowerment to pray and to cover that person. The second time that I went out and I saw a mail truck, I had to pull to the side of the road because I was crying profusely for
Yeah.
40 minutes. I couldn't get myself together. So
Yeah.
I don't know how grief is going to hit me. It comes in different waves and ebbs and flows, and I have no idea how it's going to hit me. And so I
Oh,
think that's oftentimes a misconception, that, oh, you just get over it and move forward.
yeah, it
No,
doesn't
I,
happen like that.
I can't do that. And then the other thing I think sometimes is that people dismiss that there are different types of grief. Like you said earlier, like it's a loss. Divorce is a loss.
Yeah.
Job, financial situations, it's loss. Health, those are grief. Anytime your normal rhythm of life is interrupted, there is grief
Grief. Yeah.
that occurs. And so it's important for us to be sensitive to those variant levels of grief and help people to navigate them. So,
Yeah. And like you said, my dad's been gone 16 years, right? And he
wow.
worked for the phone company. And every time I see a Verizon truck, it still brings me back to like being a kid and like pulling up in the phone truck, and it's him, right? So
Yep.
sometimes, right, selfishly, I drive as fast as I can and pull up alongside thinking I'm going to see dad in the phone truck, and I know he's gone, but it's grief, right? It's grief, and,
Right.
and it's tough.
Yeah.
And my dad was 52 when he passed.
Wow. He was
So
young.
yeah, he was young, and so I still think about, you think about the person that's gone, you love them. And I think about what my father would have accomplished right over the
Yeah.
16 years that he's been gone, what he would have done, how he would have been as a, still now as an older man, and that's grieving the loss of what he would have been, and,
Yeah.
and, and you don't think of those things. You
Right.
really
Yeah.
don't.
You don't think about it. And it is amazing. Like my mom passed on my birthday in 2009. And of course, that makes birthdays bittersweet.
Yeah.
But the joy in it, and that's part of the reason why my book is entitled The Gift in Grief, that
Yeah.
there are hidden gifts. If we really be honest with ourselves, there's some
Yeah.
gifts that are hidden. We just have to find them. But I always remember the fact that my mom was on hospice and she waited. She fought long and hard to be able to be there to wish me a happy
A
birthday.
birthday. Yeah.
And that was significant because for me, like growing up as a child, I was born in 1970. So growing up as a child, you couldn't tell me that we were going to have a year 2000. Like that just didn't make sense. Everything was 19XX, right? So I grew up with this chip on my shoulder that I'm never going to get to 30. Like that was like a huge thing
Yeah.
that like it's so unfair. My older siblings, they got to have kids and grandkids, and I'm not gonna, like, I grew up with a major chip on my shoulder. And so I remember when I turned 30, my husband threw me this big surprise party and everything. It was Y2K. I was pregnant with my second son. And, it was like, wow, life does continue into the year 2000. Like it was like this
Keeps going.
sophomoric, this whole sophomoric expression that I had was just a little off. And so I remember when I turned 30, I said to my mom, we got to plan my 40th. Like it was like, forget 31, 2, 3, 4, like all those
Yeah.
numbers in between. Mom, we got to plan this big thing for when I turn 40. And so all through my 30s, that was the whole thing I kept talking to my mom about. When I turn 40, we're going to take a trip and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. So her passing on my 39th birthday, I think that was part of why she fought so long and hard to be here, because she knew how significant birthdays were for me. And she
Yeah.
knew she wasn't going to make it to that 40th. But it was like that resilience and that resolve in
Yeah.
her. So let me at least get to her 39.
Yeah.
Like that just, my mom was such a strong and a beautiful woman. And it's like I can see that now, like that was a big thing for her to make it
To
to my
make it, yeah.
39th
That's like the
birthday.
gift, the gift
Yeah,
in the grief, yeah.
that was the gift and the
Yeah.
grief. And that was her whole big thing. Like, whatever you do, Paula, celebrate life,
Yeah.
be intentional to celebrate life. And
Yeah.
so that's what I try to do, in everything.
Oh, that's powerful. Like my dad, when he was dying on his deathbed, there was probably 50 people in the house, and
Right.
I say this all the time. His mother, my grandmother, and my sister, and I don't, I'm not saying I'm my father's favorite, because I'm not, but my sister and his mother were his favorite people in his life.
Yeah.
When my sister left to drive home my aunt, and when my grandmother went back to the nursing home right behind us,
Mhm.
my father passed away. He waited for the two of them to leave. He
Wow.
didn't wanna pass away with them, and he didn't wanna put that burden
Yeah.
on them or them to feel that way.
And that's
So
what
he
my mom
waited,
did with me. It's so
you
crazy
know?
because she was on hospice. I was just staying with her. I left work, I'm like, I'm staying with you. And she's like, no,
Yeah.
I want you to go. And because I had a hair appointment for my birthday, right? And so I was like, oh no, I'll cancel my hair appointment. She's like, no, no, go to your hair appointment, get your hair done, get it nice and curly. And I was like, why? I'm gonna be here with you. Like, I don't
Yeah.
need my hair done. Like, that's so unnecessary. And she's like, no, 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 go and do that. She's like, go and get it nice, pretty curls. And then, get it nice and curly and you can show it to me when you get back. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Mom, I don't need that. And she's like, no, go. But that was her escape. We had
Yeah.
that morning. She sang happy birthday to me. We spent some time together and then she sent me off to
She
go get
wanted
my
you out
hair
of the
done.
house. Exactly.
She
Yeah.
didn't want me in the house. And I was like, listen, now I don't know if you know how much about what happens in black salons, but generally in black salons, you start in one shampoo chair, then you got to wait and go somewhere else. I was like, listen, let me buy every chair because I don't have the time to sit and wait, right? And so I need to get my hair done. I need to get in and out. And so sure enough, I had calculated, I told my mom I'll be back by 12:30 at the latest. I was like, no problem, whatever. My mom passed at like 12:08.
She didn't want you to be there. That's, it's powerful. You don't think about it, but
Yeah,
it is. It really is.
yeah, it's powerful.
So, Paula, you've authored books and journals like Discover You and devotionals. What inspired you to put tools like these into people's hands?
Yeah, I think what inspired me was just my mom. Like, I have to say, like, when I was a child, I wrote all the time. I wrote stories, I wrote songs, poetry. Oh, Paula, there's a tree over there. Write a story about it. Okay, and I would just write and incessantly. And my childhood innocence was violated by a family member, and I went into kind of just a whole seclusion. I shut down, and unless I had to write it for school, I didn't write.
Right
Unless
at
it was
all. Yeah.
something that was obligatory, I shut that whole creative side down and I never did anything else with it. And my mom would always be like, Paula, why don't you? Nope, nope. Like I wouldn't, my childhood innocence physically was violated. My childhood innocence from my journals, my private journals was violated. And so I decided I'm not going to write anything anymore. I'm not going to trust anyone anymore. Like I just created these internal nevers.
Yeah.
And after my mom passed away, I started some of that soul searching and like, okay, Paula, if she told you to celebrate life, well, what does that look like? You got to start unlayering this onion. You got to start learning how to trust people more. You got to start learning, how to work through some of this stuff. And so I went on my own journey to do that. And so then on my 50th birthday, 11 years after my mom passed, I decided to start a blog. And my mom was a woman of great faith. She loved the fruit of the spirit and those virtues: love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, kindness, self control. Like she loved those virtues. And I decided to root my blog in those virtues. So every
Yeah.
story I would share would always have a thread of one of those
Of
virtues,
one of
just
those
as,
virtues.
an homage to her and a nod, to acknowledge her. And so I started writing the blog in her memory and her honor. And then after, when my husband passed away, I decided to write his memoir and to write the book Intentional Intimacy: Lessons in Life, Love, and Relationship, and just little anecdotal stories about my relationship with my husband that are applicable whether you're married or not married, because we all love somebody,
Yeah.
we all live in life, and we all have relationships. And so I just wanted to share our story because my husband and I, our love story, quite honestly, needs to be on Lifetime or something like that. It's something that's very
So you
unique.
turn that pain into purpose.
Yes, turn the pain
Yeah.
into purpose. And
Yeah.
so through my process, I wanted to try to help people with tools and resources to try to do that. Because, like, yes, therapy, I believe in therapy, I believe
Yeah.
in coach and having a coach and all of that. But also, at the end of the day, we're the ones that have to do the work.
Yeah.
And so by giving tools and resources that are practical, I wanted to try to offer that to people. And so that's why I've written so many different devotionals and journals.
That's awesome. I say it often, right, Paula? When people think of healing and growing, right, you often think, I'm just going to heal, right? I'm going to heal from the situation and I'm going to grow. But without the work, there's no healing and there's no growing,
That's right.
And I just learned that a couple months back, of learning that. And it's powerful because oftentimes, right, say you have some mental health issues going on, you go to the doctors and they tell you,
Mhm.
hey, or your blood pressure, take this medicine, it's going to fix you. Everyone thinks there's a pill, there's this, everything's going to
Right.
cure you, right? But until you do the work,
Gotta do the
that's
work.
when real progress starts.
And you know that from your health journey.
Yeah.
until you
Yeah.
do the work.
Yeah. You do the work and put it in. So Paul, for someone stuck in what if loops after a loss, what question do you invite them to ask themselves instead?
Yeah. So instead of what if, or maybe reframe the what if, and make it a why, or because of, well, what if this? Well, how about because of,
Yeah.
what if my husband had lived, and, you know, yeah, we could have had so many different things that we could have done, but because of him, I can still carry on the legacy. I can
Okay.
still do the things. The memories aren't lost. He's not here physically, but everything we lived through, all the lessons, all the things that we intended to do, they're still here
Oh
in the
yeah. Yeah.
earth, and I'm still here. So there's something that I need to do to honor his legacy as I'm also building my own.
Yeah.
So legacy for me has become um, a staple. It is my foundation for everything that I do. Like everything comes through the lens of legacy. So it's
Legacy.
all about reframing. It's not necessarily about what if, maybe consider because of.
Yeah, and I love that what you said in the beginning. And you're saying it now, reframing, right? Reframing the question,
Yeah.
and reframing sometimes how you look at things, and it's powerful. It's powerful when because everyone thinks like a when you lose somebody, and it's always like what if I did this, or what if I did that, or
Yeah.
like you said, why did I do this,
Hmm.
you often say sometimes when people get stuck, when you lose someone, like why did God do this to me, you know
Yeah.
or why I found oftentimes, right, and it was very um selfish of me, but I would always say, like, why did my dad died of cancer. I would say, why did my dad leave me? Like, I feel abandoned. Why did he leave me? And then I look back and I'm like, he had no choice. He fought, and when you come out and you're clear thinking, you have clarity, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand it. But I
Exactly.
lost both my mom a couple years back, so I have no mom. No mom and dad are both gone, and
Yeah.
it was tough losing dad. But I went right back to work. When I lost mom, it was different. Losing my mom was a it was tough. Losing mom was one of the hardest things of my life so far.
Yeah, that's the hard, and that's the thing. Every loss is different, and that's
Yeah,
the that's we asked about myths too. Like just because I've grieved in one area doesn't mean that I'm well prepared or know how to grieve a different loss.
a different loss. Yeah,
Like I've never. I mean, I've lost siblings. I've lost both my parents. I've lost nephews. But I've never lost a child, and
yeah.
that's not one I ever want to
Want
experience.
to experience.
I've walked through and I've walked with and alongside others who have, but I just can't imagine. I mean, like losing my dad was different than my mom,
Yeah,
and my husband. They're different.
different.
And that's the thing that we can't make. And I like to say assumptions. That just because I've been here before that I know how to navigate it. No, I have to treat this as its own new thing, and I have to encounter it as something that I've never done before. And my signature and mantra statement is I'm doing something I've never done before. So I got to give myself grace and space because I've never done this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I never thought of that, Paul, just till you said that. Like grieving is different, like from your mom to your dad. It's so true. I never,
Yeah.
it just like an aha moment for me of like, it is so true.
Yeah.
It's not all, not all loss is like, losing a mom is different than losing a father, and it's not the same, and it's very different of uh in grieving too, grieving parents and like you said, siblings and your husband,
Yeah.
and it's tough, and I think what you've done is done a great job of um not you know oftentimes when people pass, right, everybody forgets about them, right,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I forget who said it, but it was like, you truly die when your name is last spoken on this earth, right? So as long as you're speaking their name and speaking
Yeah.
of them and telling stories, their legacy is still here. Like me, my dad did union work like I do, and that was me. My legacy was following my dad in his
Yeah.
footsteps, and my little brother does it, and my dad's brother does it as well. Like we
Okay.
all do it. It's a family business, and I've done it for 20 years, and I love it.
Wow.
But my dad and I had planned a trip when he was alive to go to Washington D.C. and work together down there, and I've never told this story, and we never got there. Dad and I never got there, but a couple years back, I'm in DC, and my little brother who does the union work shows up and surprises me, and we went up to
Right.
Capitol Hill and walked around, and it was and my brother at the time, when my dad and I had the plans, wasn't involved in the union work. He was just a regular worker. So to see him come full circle, and to be on the level that he's at now with his union and the great work that he's doing, it was powerful to see
Right.
my little brother, who's named after my father, right, with me, and we were up
Okay.
there. And I know dad wasn't there, but it was almost like having my dad there with my little brother there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it was powerful. It was powerful. I
Yeah.
didn't get to do it with dad, but somehow he made it happen that I got to do it with my little brother. You know?
That's awesome. And
Yeah.
I that is big for me. I think that's such a beautiful story because it is important that we continue legacy and that we acknowledge legacy because legacy is always around.
Yeah.
But we might not always be seeing it. And so, like I said, the blog that I started, that was in honor of my mom. But now I do a video blog. So the blog comes out the first of every month.
Yeah.
And then on the 16th of every month, I do a video blog or vlog. And I do that at 8:09 p.m. Eastern Standard Time
Yeah.
because it strings the combination of January 1, 16th, my birthday, and 8:09 is 2009 military time.
Yeah.
So that was the day of my 39th birthday when my mom transitioned. So that's my way of winking and kind of making sure I'm honoring her,
Her. Yeah.
in the earth because we're forever knitted together on 116
Exactly.
2009. And so
Yeah.
I do that through the blog. I do the same thing with my husband. My husband's name was Martin. And when before I thought I was going to even write a book, I used to just write on my social media platforms, Martin Mondays, like just little post every Monday about my
Yeah.
husband. And over time, that's what became the impetus for the book. And so I wrote those segments every Monday. But now on my YouTube channel, I do something called Martin Mondays, Intentional Intimacy. And so every Monday at 1:23 p.m., because my husband's birthday was January the 23rd. And so every Monday at 1:23 p.m., my show goes live on YouTube. Just a way for me to just talk about our life together, our life when he was alive, and also how we're navigating our lives now
Oh,
without
yeah.
him. And so
Yeah.
it's just a way of paying homage and remembering and keeping their legacy
Yeah.
alive through
Alive
me.
and still
Yeah.
going. Yeah.
And it's so funny because the thing I love about it, and this is what's important for me. I didn't grow up with a grandmother. Like my both of my grandmothers had already passed away when I was born. And so for me now having my grandson, I want to be around for him. That's part of the reason for the weight loss,
Yeah.
and then also because my husband's not here, I want him to be able to have a grandparent. And so one day we were here in the house, and it's funny because I watch my Martin Mondays episodes as if I don't know what's going to happen. Are going to happen on them.
Like
And so
something new is going to come out of nowhere.
like something new, like Paul's going to pop out and do something different.
Yeah.
And so and so one day I'm watching the episode with my youngest son, and my grandson kind of came into the room and he looked on the screen. He's like, Grammy, you're on TV. And I'm like, oh yeah, Grammy's on TV. So then he sits down and he starts watching the show, and he's 7. And so he realizes what I'm talking about. And he says, Grammy, you're talking about Poppy. And I'm like, yeah, I'm talking about Poppy. I'm sharing stories about Poppy on my YouTube show.
Yeah.
He's like, wow. He said, do you have other shows? Like, he was just like, and I said, yeah, I do have some other shows. He's like, can I watch them and hear the stories about Poppy? And that's when it hit me. Like, I'm doing this now, but this is for the future,
Future. Yeah.
for his children, to watch and understand about Poppy. And
Yeah.
when Grammy is no longer here, they can see Grammy telling the story about Poppy.
Yeah.
And that's how life goes on.
Goes
The
on. Yeah.
stories get passed down from generation to generation. And that's how we keep legacy and our loved ones alive. Forever.
Alive. Yeah. That's powerful. So, how do you help clients, right, build healthy boundaries without guilt during times of personal upheaval?
Yeah. So, we try to unpack guilt. Like where's guilt coming from? Is that coming from some. I have this notion that I like to say, I like to live my life absent of obligatory obligations, but present with inward intention. So I'm living my life from the inside out. And so when we say guilt, we first have to understand the source. Because if you don't get to the root of a thing, you
Yeah.
can pluck out the top of it and fix it. But if you the root, it's gonna spring back up every single
Exactly.
time. And so at the end of the day, we got to get to the root. Where's the guilt coming from? Is that something that is being externally ascribed to you, or is that coming internally? And so we want to do the work first to understand that. Because baby, if it's external, you can cut that thing. We gonna that's
Right.
an easy. We gonna let that go. But if it's internally, then we got to do the work to understand where's that coming from.
Yeah.
Is that from past histories or whatever? And so then once we can rid ourselves and identify where that guilt is coming from, that alone frees up the opportunities, to do other things. But we've
Yeah.
got to root it out. You got to get to the root and got to get to the heart of where things are coming from. Then you can deal with it.
And like you said, the root of it, right? I often find, like you said, I think people just, instead of peeling back the layer of that onion, right? They just peel back one layer and they're like, I'm
Yeah.
healed, I'm good, instead of getting to that
Yeah.
root cause, right?
Yeah,
And
because it's gonna hurt when you start.
it
That
is.
that first layer is gonna hurt, but you gotta keep going
Got to keep
because
going,
you gotta get to. It's just like it was something where you get to the core. You gotta get to the core of it.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
you don't, it's just gonna regenerate itself. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's going to
Mhm.
rear its ugly head at some point and you're going to have to deal with it again.
Absolutely.
So Paul,
Absolutely.
I got a couple more questions, but before I do
Okay.
that, right, I just, I was thinking about it and I didn't get to say it right because I was processing it of what you said,
Yeah.
what you went through as a young child, and then being able to break free, right, and break through and start writing again, right. And I
Yeah.
just want to say I'm proud of you for
Thank
being
you.
able to do that, right,
Thank
because
you.
without that, you wouldn't be able to be reaching the people that you're reaching and helping out the
Yeah.
world, right.
Yeah.
And again, it's tough, what you went through, being violated at such a young age and shutting down that side of you, right? But
Yeah.
you decided to pick that pen up again, right? You decided to write again. And
Yes.
that's powerful, right? That's powerful in itself of you
Yes.
being able to do that and free yourself of
Thank
you
you.
know, so I'm proud of you. I really
Thank
am. I
you.
mean that from the bottom of my heart. And
Thank you.
it wasn't something I glossed over. I was listening, so I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I was still taking it in, right?
I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my husband loved me through that. Like I never told anyone in my family. I only told my husband, and the
Yeah.
way he loved and cared for me and helped me to work through it was just
Yeah.
unbelievable. And
He,
eventually I did. I never told my parents. God knows my parents never knew.
yeah.
But I ended up telling some of my siblings like later in life because what had happened was the family member that had done it, that family member passed away and they lived in Georgia. And, they were like, oh, we need to go to Georgia. And I'm like, I'll be damned if I'm going. Like, it just
Right.
came up. Like, it was just like,
Yeah.
hell to the, like, it just like, oh gosh, like, and you remember docile Paula never,
Exactly. Never came
never
out,
spoke up. And they were
Yeah.
just kind of like, why wouldn't you go, Paula? And I was just like, well, let me tell you why I would, and it's like,
Yeah. Just
yeah,
came right out, you
yeah,
know.
it had
And,
to, I had to
and I
free
do want to
myself.
say, you speak, so glowingly about your husband, Martin, and he seems like he was a gentleman and a hard worker and provider,
Yes,
and it seems like you guys were an unbelievable couple.
thank you.
I can see when you talk about him the smile that comes across your face that, he's still right there in your heart.
He
He's
is
right where he
forever.
belongs, and you probably sometimes at night sit there and fall asleep, and you can probably sometimes just know that he's right there because I see it. I see it with that smile when you say Martin, and I can see your teeth and your big smile come across your face.
Yeah,
So I can see how much of a powerful man he was to you
thank
and
you.
how he treated you and respected you. And
Yeah,
that's powerful. So if someone listening, right, is in the middle of a painful pivot right now,
yeah.
what's the most hopeful truth you'd want them to hold on to?
That look at your life and you have survived all the other difficulties. This one, as difficult as it may be, you will survive it as well. And so I think it is important for us, like what they say, history repeats itself. So if my history is that I've survived, because guess what? The fact that I'm here, I've survived 100% of my difficult days. Doesn't mean it wasn't hard, but
Yeah.
I've survived them because I'm
Yep.
still here. And so that history tells me that I'm going to survive this too.
Yep.
Yes, it's going to be difficult, but I can still get through it.
You can still get through it. And and in the future there may be some difficult days ahead as well. You never
Yep.
know.
Yeah.
So last question, Paul. Looking ahead, what's next for PH Academy, your ministries, or your personal journey?
Yeah. So I don't think I've said this publicly. So for PH Academy, we're going to continue to, sow into our students. I have a coaching methodology known as AIM, where we take awareness, intention, and momentum, and we use that as our guiding star. But for me, I'm going to continue writing. I turned 56 on my birthday this past year, and I have an objective to release 56 books in my
Wow.
56th year. And so I am happy to report that, what is it, the 10th of February, and 14 of the 56 books have already been released. So I'm
Wow.
25% of the way, and we're only 2 months in. So lots of literary writing, lots of lots of proofreading and editing is on my future. So yeah, that's what's going on for me right now.
That's awesome. So before I get into my closing, right, where can people is it paulahollis.com? Is that where they can buy the books or
So
on?
So yeah, I think the best place to connect with me is on what I call Coach Paula's World. And so that is Coach Links, Links .paulahollis.com. And so on that website is all things Paula Hollis. I have two lanes that I believe I operate in. One is the House of Growth, which is all about personal growth and development, and the other one is the House of Healing. That's how we navigate our grief and loss. And so I have variant resources, books and tools and resources and courses and different things that are out there to help people, regardless of, to be honest, both schools go together because at the end of the day, to navigate grief and loss, you're going to go through some personal growth and development.
Yeah.
So the two, even though they're parallel activities, unlike most parallel lines, they do kind of blur into one another. But that's the best place to connect to me in Coach Paula's world. Mhm.
Perfect. So Paula, what a great conversation.
Thank you
You've
so much for having me, Uncle Jimmy.
I'm so excited. You've given us so much today, not just tools or insights, but real permission to feel the weight, to honor the ache, and still choose to rise.
Yes,
You've reminded us that transitions aren't punishments, they're portals. That grief isn't something to get over, but something we grow through,
yes,
hand in hand with grace, intention, and community. And that at the core of it all, we are seen, we are held, and we are absolutely created for more. I
absolutely.
want to thank you for bringing your voice, your story, your light, and your unwavering belief in what's possible. Paula, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here, for sharing so openly, and for reminding us all that joy can coexist with sorrow, that healing is holy, that legacy isn't something we leave behind. It is something we live into every single day.
Every single
Folks,
day.
if this episode moved you, share it with someone who needs it. Drop a comment, hit that like, subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, keep showing up for yourself, keep asking the hard questions, and keep believing in the more that's waiting on the other side. And I appreciate you coming on, Paula. I
Thank
appreciate
you
your
so much,
time.
Uncle Jimmy. I wish you great success in your podcast and reaching others.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I'd love to have you come back on and talk anytime. Anytime you want to talk, I had a great conversation.
Oh, thank you. I would love that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. We can come on, talk the book, talk about the books. We can actually have you come back on when you're halfway through and we can talk about some of the books that are coming out,
Give a progress report, right?
Exactly, exactly. And
See if my hands are still.
we're gonna make sure we make sure you get to 56. So
That's right.
so as I like to say when I end the podcast, I always say peace and love, Uncle Jimmy out. And people ask me, right, why peace and love? And I say, because after 41 years of my life, I've finally found peace. And why love? And I say, because I've finally, after 41 years, I've found love. And people say, well, what does she look like? Is she beautiful? Where is she? And I say, no, I found love for myself finally after 41 years.
That's amazing. My last brother who passed away in October of 2019, for years, I mean, the last 40 or so years of his life, he never said hello, he never said goodbye. When he greeted people, he always said peace and love.
Peace and love.
Peace and
That's
love.
awesome. It's
That is
almost like he's talking through me to you right now,
yes,
right?
yeah,
You know? It's so
yes.
powerful. So
Peace and
powerful.
love.
You know, we're
Yeah,
all intertwined whether you wanna believe it or not,
we
you
really
know?
are. We
You
really
know?
are. We really because I don't know. I tell my kids at the end of the day, we may look different externally,
Yeah.
but we still have those same common colors: red, brown, and yellow. And you know
Yellow.
what I mean. So
Exactly.
no matter
Exactly.
what the outside is, the inside is always still doing the same.
No doubt about it. So, like I said, we're gonna have Coach Paul back on for a progress report, making sure she gets to 56.
Yes,
We
hold
are
me
so
accountable.
proud. We are so proud of you here at Uncle Jimmy's podcast. And as I like to say, you came on as a guest, but now you're family.
Yes, thank you, Uncle
You know,
Jimmy.
and I look forward to following you on the social medias, updating my listeners, and peace and love,
Awesome.
peace and love. Uncle Jimmy out.
Thanks, Uncle Jimmy.